Okay, new clock. Let's see what we can figure out about this one. I got this from the Brown Elephant Resale Shop in Andersonville. It looks like a red oak case. We have a paper face here marked New Haven. That's probably the New Haven Clock Company, which was around from the 1860s to the 1950s. Based on style, I would put this late 19th century to early 20th century. We got a little bit of missing wood here, but all in all, the case is in good condition. We open her up. Nice brass hinges with flathead screws, so this puts this earlier. These screws poking through here tells me that they're probably not original. We'll see. We can figure out. Paper face on a tin back, held in with tiny little flathead screws. Unfortunately, the minute hand is off. You heard it click and try to chime there for a moment. So we'll have to figure out what's going on with that. Looks like probably the back here is colored with lamp black. So that's going to be fun to clean up. That's literally just the soot from kerosene lamps. And it came with several parts, including, and this is odd, 3 different keys, one of which is broken. This is the one that actually fits the clock. 2 pendulum bobs and an additional piece of a pendulum bob. Based on how ornate this is, it's probably not for this clock. If either of these is the right one, it's this one. And a spirit level. Cute little spirit level. I guess to help keep the clock level, along with a broken clock latch. So, new project. We'll get into it, figure out what's going on. So let's get to some disassembly here. I'll start with these hinges.
Screws.
And I'm noticing along this edge, there's a little bit of finish, I don't know if you can see it in this light, that lips over. It's really noticeable here. Someone has refinished this at some point, but didn't bother to disassemble and refinish the interior. And now let's take the clock face off.
It's just on here with 3 flathead screws.
We're going to remove the hands. There's a little pin here that holds in the minute hand. Just wiggle that out. And then it's held on with a square washer as well. So we want to make sure we don't lose that. And the hour hand is just held in by tension, so it pops right out. And we can remove the face. And now I can see the works. So nothing obviously broken looking at them. This big gap in the spring here tells me that the spring probably needs to be oiled, but that's not a big deal. Paying attention to this mechanism that the pendulum attaches via, because I'm gonna have to recreate that since the pendulum rod was not included. And at some point, something else was glued up here at the top that's since been removed. I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. So I was scrubbing up the case. I took off this decorative piece that was on with the 2 long screws and scrubbed up the back and noticed there are these three rectangular outlines visible in the finish that probably originally were glue blocks or bracing blocks with a more decorative front. Which makes sense, because when I was looking for pictures of other similar clocks from the New Haven Clock Company, I kept finding clocks with far more decorative details on them. So I think someone replaced the original decor at some point with this more simple top. Maybe because the original broke, or maybe they just didn't like the original top. So what do y'all think? Should I put back the decorative piece it came with, or try to recreate one of these more extravagant designs? Let me know. So now let's take the works out of the case. Looking pretty good. Then all the brass bits get a good soaking in ammonia. Then a bit of a polish with some steel wool. A quick rinse. Then a quick spray down with everyone's favorite WD-40. So when I first opened this up, I noticed that the minute hand wasn't sticking properly. Unfortunately, the minute hand is off. You heard it click and try to chime there for a moment. So we'll have to figure out what's going on with that. So I was doing some investigation, trying to figure out what was going on. I don't know if you can see this, but there's one little sprocket almost right in the middle that is loose and is sliding up the shaft that runs the minute hand, so that it's not interfacing with this gear here that is driven by this spring here. And it looks like there's a little set screw right back here that has come loose and is keeping this sprocket from latching into place. So I'm gonna try to fix it. The first thing I have to do is try to get it to where it's actually interfacing with this sprocket here properly, which is a little tricky, but I think I can just about make that work. Well, that's running. So now that they're interfacing, I need to tighten this set screw here, and that should fix the problem. So with the works out, I can start working on the case. And that's gonna start with just some wood soap and warm water and a cheap scrub brush. Then once it's dried, a quick rub down with some steel wool just to give it a little tooth. Then another wipe down with a clean, damp rag with some wood soap to get up any dust raised from the steel wool. And then just a very light coat of some garnet shellac, just to freshen things up a little bit and also connect the parts that the last person refinished to the parts that they did not refinish and even things out a bit. And now I just reattach the clockworks. And then give it a good going over with a generous amount of clock oil. Every spring, every sprocket. Then I'll hang it up vertically to test out and make sure it's running. Now it's going very fast right now because I haven't attached the pendulum yet, but we'll get to that. I'm also going to test out the chime and see how it's dampening itself a little bit. So I'm just going to make a tiny adjustment. That might be a little soft. That's better. And let's test out how that works. Let's see now. Pretty happy with that. So the clock came with 2 pendulums. And looking at the pictures I found of other New Haven clocks with this standard time decal, it's pretty clear to me that the big round brass pendulum bob is the correct one. So, which I've polished up now. But unfortunately, that did not come with a pendulum rod. So I've got this piece of 1/4-inch red oak that I have cut to approximate length and width. I'll probably have to make some adjustments as we go. But I don't like these sharp corners, so I'm gonna sand them. I'm gonna use this 36 grit sandpaper just to sand the edges down, give it a nice little bit of a curve. And now that that's closer to the rounded over shape I want, I'll use progressively finer sandpaper to give it a good finished edge. And finish it off with some 4/0 steel wool to really get the final finish nice and smooth. Then it's a coat of shellac, and we'll see how closely the new wood matches the old finish and if we need to make some color corrections. Well, the first coat of shellac is dried, and I hit it with some steel wool again. But looking at the pendulum stick up against the finish of the clock, it's clearly lighter. So I've got some dark walnut stain here. I'm just gonna give that a little quick coat, and we'll see how that works out. We'll let that dry and see what the next step is. 2 more coats of stain, 2 more coats of shellac. A little lighter still, but probably close enough considering it's not going to be up next to the original finish. Attach it to the shined up pendulum bob, and Bob's your uncle. We have ourselves a pendulum. Once I get the rest of the clock together, I'll need to adjust the height of the pendulum to keep accurate time, but so far so good. I had hoped I'd find this little piece of missing wood when I went through the bits and bobs that came with the clock, but no such luck, so gonna have to find some way to replace it.
So, easy enough. And then, let's see.
Fortunately, I have a little piece of red oak that I've been using as a glue block that I can glue right on there. But first, I need to clean up this surface so that it'll take the glue well. Use a chisel to try to square it up just a little. Nice clean. And then take some 80 grit sandpaper. We put a little wood glue. Then once the glue dries, we take it out of the clamp, sand it up a bit, place it against the other one, and trace out the outline of this detail with a pencil. Cut to shape and sand it up. Little bit of stain, a little shellac, more stain, another coat of shellac. Then it just goes right back from whence it came. A little bit of wood glue. Help keep it in place. And missing wood replaced. I think you'd have a little bit of difficulty telling which one was original and which one's the replacement. A little bit of missing wood here and missing wood replaced. So it seems like y'all want me to try to recreate these more ornate tops, and I'm going to use this one as my inspiration. First step.
Measure the width of the case, 15 and 5/8. Load up the inspiration picture onto the computer and make it half the width of the actual clock, so that's 7.456. And then we print it.
And then cut out the shape to use as a template.
So unfortunately, the template is a little bit taller than my piece of 1/4 inch red oak that I have here. So what I'm going to do is take another smaller piece and butt glue them together like this, edge glue them, to make a wider piece that I can then cut the template out from. So I'm going to take a piece of packing tape, put it down on this scrap wood I have to act as a glue resistance. Take my 2 pieces of red oak, line them up, excellent. I'm going to use some clamps to keep everything still. Some wood glue. Generous amount of wood glue right there on the edge. Excess will squeeze out, it will be fine. Yeah, there we go. Other piece of red oak. Lined up. Nice squeeze out. More clamps. Here and here. Then we clamp these together good and tight. Fortunately, that one's too short. So I'm gonna have to use the big clamps.
Nice, gonna squeeze out.
And there we go, all clamped up. Now it's time to trace out our template. So now that's roughly cut out, and we sand it up. For the side rails, I just took the edge of the template here, folded it in half to create a half edge, and then trace that out on some of the scrap. So then I tape two pieces of wood together, cut them out, and now I have two largely identical rails. Next step, get the tape off and sand them down really well. So I'll sand it up and then glued the front and sides together using some 1x1 oak square dowel. Clamped, allowed to dry, and here we go. Now it's a coat of stain. A coat of shellac. Hit that with some 4/0 steel wool. And another coat of shellac. Hit that with some 4/0 steel wool. And a little more stain. And then another coat of shellac. And we put it in place. So what do y'all think? Is this the right look? Or should I go with the capital the clock came with? Let me know what you think. And now it's time to put all the pieces back together. So I'm gonna start with this capital. And since it's just decorative, I'm not gonna glue it on, I'm just gonna attach it with some screws. So if someone wants to come along later and remove it, it'll be very easy for them. So I put down some tape to make it easier to see my marks. Line this up where I want it to be. Mark the edges with a pencil. And then transfer those marks in 5/8 of an inch from the edge here so that the screw will go directly in the middle of these 1x1s, which 1x1s are actually 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. It's weird. And now we drill. To transfer the marks back onto the bottom of this, we put this back in place where we want it. Get our pencil out from underneath the case. and transfer the marks back. Then using a smaller drill bit, I'm going to drill pilot holes in the capital. Then I've got these 3/4 inch flathead brass screws that I'm going to use to attach it. And there you go. Now it's time to put the face back on. It's a paper face, so you can't really clean it. I could replace it completely, but I kind of like having that old character. So all I did is take a damp melamine sponge, you may know it under the name brand Magic Eraser, and give it a light going over just to kind of get the top layer of crud off. But we put it back with the 3 screws it came with. And now the hands. The hour hand is just held in by tension, so we'll adjust this once we get the clock in place. And then the minute hand is held in with a square washer and this itty bitty bitty pin that I'm going to try to thread through the hole. Then we reattach the latch. and reattach the door. Now, all the steps I took with the case, I took with the door as well. Wood soap and shellac and the whole 9 yards. I also back painted this black portion a little bit with some black acrylic paint to make up for the paint that had flaked off over the years. From start to finish, this is what it looked like when I got it. I've cleaned and realigned some of the works, cleaned up the whole case, replaced some missing wooden bits. I paid $25 for this clock at the Brown Elephant, and I have probably about $25 worth of materials into it and about 20 hours of labor. I've seen clocks like this online selling for $200 to $300.